people that are in a pretty fragile times. That's right. Anyway, we haven't seen it. I say that. And to see people from the same similar areas on the time.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's public forum being held in the council chambers for this Monday, the 26th of Albury. A reminder that the public forum is being audio recorded for administrative purposes. By speaking at the public forum, you agree to being recorded. Please ensure that if and when you are speaking at this public forum, that you are respectful to other people and use appropriate language. Albury City accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of this public forum. Item 2 on our public forum agenda, conflict of interest declarations received by the Chair. Mr. CEO?
None received, Mickey.
None received. Thank you. We'll head to our speakers for tonight. So our first speaker is David Hunter in relation to CM 9.1, CM 9.2, development application 10.2023.4057 in relation to the 114 lot Torrance title subdivision at Brooklyn Fields Estate. Good evening.
Thank you. Thanks, councillors. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you again. Again, I'm here on behalf of the landowners and developers, Peter and Jane Bowen of Peter Bowen Homes. Firstly, I'd like to thank the councillors for bringing this matter back before council for consideration tonight. I'll only talk briefly tonight, noting that I made more detailed comments only a couple of weeks ago to you about the proposal. And we've also noted from the agenda that there were additional details provided by staff in relation to the items that were requested. From the applicant's perspective, we fully agree and we support the detail that was provided to council. That information, in our view, is accurate and reflects the application that we've provided. We understand that information is important to council and that supplementary material is important for you to make a decision. So we hope that information will enable you to make a decision tonight. In terms of the conditions and the detail added, we believe that will enhance and support the delivery of the measures that we've put forward. We also believe that they will have positive outcomes for the site and they'll integrate with measures that have already been put into place, including habitat wetlands and other environmental considerations for Sloanes Froglet. As I mentioned last time, this application is only for a small portion of the remaining land known as Brooklyn Fields. There is a northern and central part of the site which is not subject to this application. There is ongoing work with that site and the applicants are being advised by a range of technical experts in relation to that part of the site, and they will need to continue to liaise with agencies around their relevant obligations, and that work's going to continue. I guess the only other comment is probably just to reiterate my comments that I made last time around the working relationship with both council and the New South Wales Biodiversity Division. That's been a really positive relationship and continues to be with the landowners, and not just around the planning approval work, but in relation to matters such as sharing data around Sloan's population in growing areas of Thurgoona, and also working with them around best practice design on how we continue to evolve development and make sure we provide positive outcomes. That's it, and I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any, and thanks again for your consideration.
Thank you, David. Any questions for tonight's public speaker? If not, thank you for your presentation.
Thanks very much.
Our next speaker is Elizabeth Lethbridge, also in relation to that development application, and Elizabeth is speaking in favour of the motion. Feel free to whack that down so it's at a height that's a bit more agreeable to you.
Just a little.
You're right. Thank you. Oh, Tracy's going to help.
And I have a somewhat husky voice after a bit of a...
Yes, I
some
can
time
relate.
off.
It's
That's
going
fine
around,
for me.
isn't it?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, councillors and executive staff for this opportunity to present to you on two different items, and I'll just address the first one until you tell me otherwise. So first, I wish to address you in my personal capacity on the rescission motion 9.1 and motion 9.2 relating to Brooklyn Fields stages 6 and 7, and then later on behalf of Thurgoona Willinga Community Action Group in relation to item 13.2, which is the link road at Woolshed Estate. Both items tonight revolve around how we manage the risks to the endangered Sloan's froglet, but I'll try to separate the issues by saying that the first issue is providing for safe movement through the landscape. The other is of constructing an unsurpassable obstacle. First, I need to say that I'm not a scientist and I rely on my readings of the environmental impact statements and the biodiversity assessment reports. On Brooklyn Fields, for background, I previously submitted an objection to stages 6 and 7, then sent a correction relating to the filling of the dam. That was after reading the BioAssess report to council. Then a later submission regarding wildlife when I was unable to attend the 12th of August meeting to address the previous rescission motion. So I hope the councillors have had the opportunity to review all three of those documents. Sorry, there's so many. My main concern is how to provide for appropriate movement corridors for wildlife and the need to connect existing environmental areas so we can achieve our goal of a city in nature and protect those species that we are required to protect. I've read the draft consent, and given the proposed amendments to the conditions at B5, which is the Sloane Swale, I now support motion 9.1 to rescind and then grant a new motion 9.2, which introduces the requirement to build a Sloane Swale across the estate and to keep the dam. That is mainly because Dr. Alexandra Knight of Charles Sturt University, who's a Sloane's froglet specialist, has said to me previously that swales, such as those you find along the roadsides around Thurgoona Park, are the very best way to ensure amphibian movement through the landscape, and I'm happy to rely on her opinion. One, however, though, in the motion, which Councillor Glacken and others seek to rescind, so that's the motion from last time, I see there's an important recommendation for referral to the New South Wales Government Biodiversity Conservation Division for advice regarding solutions to support the existing population of Sloane's froglet, and I hope that that intent can still be actioned for any future stages of this very significant site. I also note that the developers waited some time to progress this application to the next stage. So Council now needs to choose whether to refuse motion 9.1 and proceed to refer to the Biodiversity Conservation Division, or to proceed with the new conditions proposed in motion 9.2 and hope that the experiment is successful. And let's call a spade, it is an experiment. In either event, I certainly wish to commend to you the officer's recommendation for the swale. The recommendation for appropriate planting is sensible. There needs to be a purposeful plan to leave the base of the swale unmowed through winter when Sloane's froglets are breeding and moving across the landscape. Mowing can still be done for summer fire control if needed. And swales, of course, are also very useful for surface water flow management if placed along suitable contours. Now, as I understand it, if rescinding the first rescission motion of the 12th of August brings the original objections up again. So I do wish to add one little thing. I'm concerned at the recent spate of criminal activity occurring in this new estate, which seems to be triggered by people leaving their cars in their driveways instead of locking them away. I'm quite sure the developer did not plan this as a result of his nice new development. But if blocks had a wider frontage, residents could drive their cars into their backyards and perhaps attract fewer thieves testing their car door handles and stealing at night. It can be designed out. So that's it for the motions. Does anyone have any questions on that?
Thank you for your presentation and comments. Any questions at all? No, thank you very much.
Okay. Let's step back because I'll take speed.
The next item that
All
you are
right.
speaking to, as mentioned, is on behalf of the Thurgoona Willinga Community Action Group to do with the link road between Woolshed Estate stages 1 to 5 and stages 6 to 10. So that is in relation to item CM 13.2, speaking against the recommendation.
Thank you. I was not an original objector to this matter, so I have no standing in that respect. But I come to you as Treasurer of Thurgoona Willinga Community Action Group in the absence of both our President and Secretary. And I refer you to the submission made by Chester Merrick submitted on February 2022 on behalf of Thurgoona Community Action Group, as it was then, specifically addressing the Sloane's Froglet assessment. Since then, the classification of Sloane's Froglet has worsened and it's now listed as an endangered species, mainly due to habitat loss, drought and amphibian chytrid fungus. I've asked staff to provide you all with the final declaration and reasons of the New South Wales Threatened Species Scientific Committee, which was published on the 30th of June 2023, which is very useful reading. You'll be saddened to note at point 4 of that report that the Albury Thurgoona population is considered to be in decline. But pleased to hear at least that the rate of decline has been slowed by targeted conservation management, I would say largely due to council and developers' efforts, plus the bonus of 3 La Niña years in a row. With this particular development proposal, a significant issue seems to be that no one yet knows if culverts will be used by froglets at all or under what weather and water flow conditions. The current scientific opinion seems to be that they won't use culverts at all. As a consequence, the BDAR author then suggests sloping sides and semi-mountable curbs to assist froglet movement over the road. And I do note that the curb type is mentioned but phrased differently at D14 in the draft conditions. Thurgoona Willinga Community Action Group submits that the built-up road will prevent effective movement of the froglets altogether, as once they've clambered up the proposed slopes over the semi-mountable curb and onto the road, they'll just be squashed by passing traffic. Movement over a hard open surface will also render them very vulnerable to predators, especially birds. This option does not seem to be an adequate solution to the problem, and we propose that this issue of a seemingly impassable obstacle is one that should be referred to the New South Wales Biodiversity Conservation Division. We submit that the development approval should be deferred until this is done or alternatively refused. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Any further questions? If not, thank you very much for your time.
Can I offer, if councillors do wish a copy of this, I can email it in for distribution if it assists.
Thank
I was a
you.
bit pushed
That
for
would be
time.
helpful.
Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's council meeting being held in the council chambers for this Monday, the 26th of August. We'll start with the opening affirmation and acknowledgement of country. We gather to represent the people of Albury who have entrusted us with this task. May our efforts be blessed with insight, wisdom and common sense. May our personal values give us honesty and courage to serve our community effectively and with respect for all. We would like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people as the traditional custodians of the land that we meet upon today and pay our respects to the elders past, present and future, for they hold the memories, hopes, tradition and culture of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that contribute to our community. This council meeting is being webcast and recorded. By speaking at the council meeting, you agree to being recorded and webcast. Please ensure that if and when you are speaking at this council meeting, that you are respectful to other people and use appropriate language. Albury City accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of this council meeting. An audio recording will be made for administrative purposes. Item 3, conflict of interest declarations received and disclosure of political donations. Mr. Zagnich.
Thanks, Mayor King. One conflict of interest declaration submitted from myself as CEO in relation to the CEO performance review, item 17.1, 23-24 performance review, the action I'll take is to leave the council chamber when the matter is discussed. In terms of disclosure of political donations and the requirements of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act, the Act under Section 10.4 requires that a person submitting a planning application or submissions regarding a planning application is to disclose any reportable political donation and or gifts to any local councillor or employee of council. Reportable political donations include those of or above $1,000. The disclosure statement forms are available on Council's website and must be lodged in accordance with the Act. In dealing with development applications, councillors need to take into account specific planning matters contained in the Act. Accordingly, the provisions of Section 4.151 of that Act are set out in the Council Officer's report detailing planning issues to be considered. The Local Government Act, Section 375A, requires that a division be called whenever a motion for a planning decision is put at a meeting of the council. Planning decision means a decision made in the exercise of a function of council under the Act, including a decision relating to a development application, an environmental planning instrument, a development control plan, or a development contribution plan under that Act, but not including the making of an order under Division 9.3 of Part 9 of that Act. Thank you, Mayor King.
Thank you. CM4 apologies. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you through you to move the recommendation as a motion that we receive and note and accept the apology of Councillor Betteridge and grant leave of absence for the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you. Councillors, we'll put the motion. Those for, those against. That motion is carried. Thank you. CM 4.2, attendance by councillors at meeting by audio-visual link. We have none. CM 5, a mayoral minute. I do have a mayoral minute. Tonight marks the final meeting of our term on council, noting it was a short term of 2 years and 9 months due to COVID-19. I'd like to thank my council colleagues and in particular acknowledge the councillors who are not seeking re-election. Councillor Thurley will retire after nearly 12 years as a councillor, including one term as Deputy Mayor. That is a considerable contribution and dedication to our community. Councillor Thurley is a passionate advocate for Albury and has been a respected chair and council representative on multiple local and regional committees during that time, including as National President of the Murray-Darling Association for 8 years, making him the longest-serving president of that organisation to date. Councillor Betteridge has also announced he will not contest the next election. He has also served nearly 12 years as a councillor, but on 2 different occasions, and more recently in this current term. His enthusiasm and contribution to council over such a significant number of years is also commended and appreciated. On behalf of my fellow councillors, I would like to wish you both well in your retirement from council at this stage, and thank you for your commitment and contribution to our community, and also our partners, obviously wife Sue. She's done a great job of supporting you in allowing you to join us on behalf of our community. And to all councillors, it has been my pleasure to work alongside you during this term. I thank you for your support as Mayor. Your guidance and passion for Albury City has been outstanding. So thank you. Also, thank you to the executive and team of Albury City for your dedication and support in assisting councillors in their roles, as well as your individual efforts when combined contribute to making Albury the nationally significant regional city that we like to say that it is. To our family and friends, thank you for your support. We could not do it without you. Once again, I wish all councillors the very best for the future. Thank you. CM6 action plans. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you through you to move the recommendation as a motion that the following action plans be received and noted. 1, action plans complete for noting only. 2, actions awaiting response from external parties. 3, actions in progress. And 4, long-term issues more than 3 months.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Mayor King, I'll second the motion. I do have 1 or 2 words to say about it.
Fabulous. Councillor Glacken, do you wish to speak to it? Speaker for Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. There is a matter in the long-term issue, more than 3 months, relating to the use of biosolids. And I know the work there is ongoing, but let me say I'll be watching.
Thank you, councillor Thurley. Happy to put that motion then, councillors. Those for? Those against? That motion is carried. CM7, confirmation of minutes of previous meetings. CM 7.1, minutes of the council meeting held on Monday, the 12th of August at 7:50 p.m. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move that the minutes of the council meeting held on Monday, the 12th of August 2024 at 7:50 p.m. be confirmed.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan.
Happy to second, Mayor King.
Thank you, councillors. Any speakers for, against or comments in relation to the minutes? In that case, happy to put that motion too. Those for? Those against? That motion is carried. CM8, reports from community forums. We have none. CM9, notices of motion, notices of rescission. CM 9.1, notice of rescission, development application 10.2023.40579.1, 114 Lot Torrens Title Subdivision, Brooklyn Fields Estate, Stages 6 and 7, Brooklyn Drive, Thurgoona. Councillor Glacken.
You through you, Madam Mayor, to move the recommendation as a motion that council rescind resolution council meeting 13.2 of the 12th of August 2024. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron.
I'd like to second that, Mayor King.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, very briefly to highlight why I believe we should be rescinding this resolution. And that is because a significant amount of work has been undertaken by the staff with regards to this development, and that was not made clear to councillors at the last meeting as part of the last report. And with this new information, I believe we should be reviewing this decision. Thank you.
You question, Councillor Edwards.
I have several. Through you, Mayor King, to the relevant member of staff. The original report to councillors on the 12th of August meeting stated that the council staff requested further information from the applicant on the 28th of February 2024 in order to fully assess the application. The further information requested included clarification of the potential impact of this development on matters of national environmental significance. So my question is, why were council staff requesting information about these matters?
Through the chair, thank you for your question. In order to be satisfied that the matters of national environmental significance were adequately addressed, council administration sought additional information. That additional information was provided and was considered on the basis of the assessment that had been done preceding the application, as well as the information provided that no referral was required, as the threatened ecological community of seasonal herbaceous wetland constituting Gilgai was outside of the development area and not negatively impacted. Further, that this loan's froglet habitat and the connectivity that's proposed as part of this development was sufficient to demonstrate that it was protected and improved and that the impact was negligible. On the basis of that, it was considered that it was unnecessary to demand, not that council can necessarily demand that to occur, but the referral to EPBC on basis of EPBC matters.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards.
Yeah, follow up. So that assessment, the self-assessment that's done to determine the referral, I understand all of that. But my understanding is also that as part of that process, a matters of national environmental significant report is prepared. So what I requested since the last meeting was for staff to provide a copy of that report to councillors, and that has not been provided. So my question is it usual in circumstances such as these for those reports to be provided to council for developments that may impact on areas of potential or actual Commonwealth level threatened habitat or species prior to council DA approval?
Through the chair, so I can speak specifically to this application. A test of significance was undertaken. There was a search using the Protected Matters search tool regarding matters of national environmental significance. On the basis of that search and the information provided in the test of significance, and on the basis of advice received internally, it was considered that there was no need to make the referral. And that was the extent of the detail that was provided with the application.
So to confirm, staff have not seen the MNES report.
Through the chair. So for the purposes of this application, the information that was submitted with it was relied upon in making the recommendation to council.
Okay, I'll take that as a no. And one final question through you, Mayor King. If the adjacent Thaguna Link Road gets Commonwealth approval, can the proposed mitigation measures for this DA on Kerr Road, that being the swales and frog-proof fencing, be protected throughout the construction and operation? Or will they need to be demolished to make way for the new road?
Thank you for the question through you, Mayor King. I wouldn't speculate on that other than to say if there was an approval, it would appear clear to me that the protection and considerations around the seasonal herbaceous wetland and Sloads froglet would be foremost in everyone's mind.
Thank you.
Thank you. Question, councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King, to the relevant staff member. I think this has kind of been answered. So is the 50-metre buffer explicitly supported by the state government experts in regards to the herbaceous wetlands?
Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, thank you for the question through you, Mayor King. The 50-metre buffer was established in discussion with our environment team. There's no specific requirement in terms of a buffer. A buffer is generally recommended, but the 50 metres in this case was considered sufficient.
Okay, follow up if that's okay. I suppose my question is the 50, your group think it is adequate. I'm not sure if it is adequate considering we've just done the conservation land zones where we encourage most landowners at 80 metres. It just seems a bit in conflict with what we've resolved in other spaces.
Is there a question buried in that soliloquy?
And also clarification too, was it 40 metres generally rather than 80? I think might have been part of it. Some were 80, but yeah.
What we've just approved and what we're approving now, the 50 does.
Sorry, councillor Callaghan, just have to deal with the point of order. Again, councillor Cameron, clarification for your point of order.
Yeah, there doesn't appear to be a clear question, but rather a discussion about council policies. The question has already been asked and answered if the zone was mandatory.
No, that was my first question.
Sorry, councillor Callaghan. Just to clarify, I'll accept the question in terms of the 40 metre because that is referenced. Happy for Mr. Wilson to address that question.
Through the chair, so I mean, I hesitate to some degree to go into a lengthy response about what happened with the Conservation Zone Lands Review and what's happening in this case. This land wasn't identified for inclusion in the Conservation Zone Lands Review. So in terms of considerations around buffering from a waterway, I don't know that we're necessarily talking about the same thing. Nevertheless, administration recognises that this is an important area and recognises in terms of future stages of Brooklyn Fields that it's a serious matter that will need to be contended with.
Thank you. Speaker 4, councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Mayor King. Rescission motions are not a common thing, but they're a very important tool of local government. And everybody makes mistakes, even I. And from time to time, councils will make mistakes that when more information becomes available or when people have had time to consider what went on in the particular meeting, it becomes apparent that they should support a rescission motion. This is one such case. There are very few areas in our community where we can expand our housing options. The development of new estates is essential, absolutely essential. I can speak from my own experience recently as I'm a renter and I'm in good employment, as is my wife, and I have a perfect rental record. It took me over 4 months to find rental accommodation. For people who are not in as an advantaged position as I am, the situation is even more dire. It is becoming endemic now for people to plead on Facebook for assistance in finding houses to rent in Albury. And the property market itself is hyperinflated. We have a a desperate need for more housing, and developments such as this must be supported. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker against, councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor King. It's very disappointing to see this rescission motion brought to council, particularly to undo a democratic decision made by councillors at a meeting where all councillors were present. Now, here we are at a meeting where not all councillors are present, and I think this is less than good governance by this council. This decision should not be rescinded because two key things haven't changed since this council decided, quite rightly, to defer this DA at the last meeting. The first are the environmental issues with the Commonwealth. I feel that they remain unresolved. We're being told that the proponent has done a self-assessment for Commonwealth referral. Great. Staff have also confirmed to councillors in an email that a significant impact criteria report, or MNES, is yet to be developed as part of the self-assessment by the proponent. So if the assessment has been done, why can't we see the report, or why hasn't the report been done? Staff have advised that council is not part of the referral process and it remains between the proponent and the Commonwealth. This is fine. So why then did staff ask about this on the 28th of February? The detail about why the proponent has self-assessed that Commonwealth isn't required is relevant to the approval of this DA. And the report that backs up the decision not to refer to the Commonwealth either doesn't exist or remains unavailable. Staff have again confirmed that conversations with the Commonwealth are apparently ongoing. So why is council being presented with this DA when these matters are unresolved? The second issue is that the state government doesn't support the proposed mitigation measures for Sloane's Froglet. We now have some clarity on the view of the state government about the proposed mitigation measures. They are not preferred. In an attachment to an email from Ms. Leopold, Deputy CEO, on the 19th of August to all councillors about the triggers for referral under the Biodiversity Conservation Act 2016, under the heading Reasons for Non-Referral, the document states that there is no specific requirement to refer to the BCD. However, the consultation was undertaken relating Brooklyn Fields stage 6 and 7, which ensured that sufficient level of assessment and mitigation measures were undertaken. That sounds great. The document, however, goes on to state that a telephone conversation between BCD in July and council discussed connectivity for Sloane's, specifically the proposed connectivity and use of fences to direct Sloane's through culverts proposed by the applicant. The document says that it was established that culverts and fences were not a preferred method. I note that the foreshadowed motion for approval of this DA includes an amendment to condition B5 that now includes some provision for BCD approval of these mitigation measures. And that sounds great on paper. However, the mitigation methods remain the same, despite conversations with BCD revealing that this method was not preferred in the first place. For these two reasons, it remains incredibly risky and an example of poor governance for this council to rescind the motion, to defer and subsequently approve the DA as is. It is so important to get development in our environmentally significant and sensitive areas right. If there are impacts to our threatened species in their habitat, then they need to be appropriately avoided, minimised and/or mitigated. And we as councillors need all the relevant documents to support our decision-making. So I cannot support development that has unknown impacts to threatened species and mitigation measures that are short-term and are not even supported by state government experts. This DA remains undercooked and should be refused and considered together with the information that addresses the outstanding issues. So I won't be supporting this motion to rescind.
Thank you, councillor Edwards. Speaker 4, councillor Baker.
Thank you, Mayor King. I voted last meeting to defer this for further information. I've now seen further information and on balance, I believe this development should go ahead and I'll be supporting the rescission motion.
Thank you, councillor Baker. Any other questions or comments? Can I address, if I may, some of the concerns that councillor Edwards has raised, Mr. Wilson? Specifically, that this application is not supported by state government experts. Can you shed some more light on some of the concerns that councillor Edwards has raised for me, please?
To the chair. So in terms of state government engagement in this application, And specifically relating to environmental matters, BCD wasn't formally referred the application, but it's been an ongoing discussion with them about the previous stages of Brooklyn Fields and indeed the conditions of consent which are proposed to deal with connectivity regarding Sloan's froglet habitat. So while there's been no formal referral, they are intimately involved in the considerations about this application, and to be frank with you, an important partner that Albury City has in the environmental area, particularly in relation to Sloan's froglet habitat.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Glacken to close debate? Yeah, just at the last minute, I had a little question pop in. I'll accept the question. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor King. Through you to the relevant member of staff. Clarification then that those important ongoing conversations with the state government have included them not supporting or not seeing the proposed mitigation measures as preferred methods, as stated in the email we received earlier.
Mr. Wilson.
Through the chair, my understanding, and I wasn't involved in the discussions, is that the conditions that you see before you in the revised drafted form considered those discussions and included suggestions from Biodiversity Conservation Division. So, yeah, it certainly, to me at least, it appears that these discussions have been had, and I don't imagine for one second that these discussions have ceased or will cease to in relation to this application and the subsequent stages, importantly, that will happen in terms of subdivision works.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken, did you wish to close? Happy to put the motion. Councillors, we'll put the motion in division, please. Councillors, those for, Councillors Thurley, Bowen, King, Cameron, Glacken, Baker. Those against, Councillors Callaghan and Edwards. That motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. CM 9.2, Notice of Motion, Development Application 10.2023.40579.1, 114 Lot Torrens Title Subdivision, Brooklyn Fields Estate, Stages 6 and 7, Brooklyn Drive, Thurgoona. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. And Councillor Thurley normally gets the very long motions. Through you to move the recommendation, the motion. That Council A receives and notes this report. B grants consent to development application 10.2023.40579.1 for a 114 lot Torrens title subdivision of lot 479 in DP 12844714 Thurgoona in 2 stages, Brooklyn Fields stages 6 and 7, subject to the conditions contained in the draft notice of determination development consent included at attachment 2 of this report. Notes the previously submitted documents staff have considered in the assessment of the development application as per the Council's business paper on the 12th of August 2024. See attachment 1, including the following: proposed subdivision plan, statement of environmental effects, response for further information, redacted submissions, assessment report, draft notice of determination, development consent, and D, notes the referrals of the Commonwealth Department of Climate Change and Energy, the Environment and Water, and the State Biodiversity Conservation Division on this matter were not required. E, notes the condition A8 provides for improvements to Sloan froglet habitat in Reserve 8, subject to the satisfaction of Council on the Biodiversity Conservation and Science group with the Department of Climate Change, Energy, the Environment and Water. F, amend condition B5 to incorporate further improvements to the proposed Sloan's froglet connectivity swale with reference to B5 Sloan's froglet connectivity swale stage 6 prior to issue of a subdivision works certificate. Detailed drawings shall be submitted to the department, DCCEEW and the biodiversity BCD and Council's environmental team's approval, including A, the provision of a 3 metre wide, 3.3 metre deep swale connecting the 9 Mile Creek to the Woolshed Creek, but not traversing nor impacting upon the seasonal herbaceous wetland, the Gilgai shown in G1 in Figure 6 of the Hydrological Assessment Final Report, Alluvium Thurgoona Link Road Project for October 2023 to function as connectivity habitat for Sloane's froglet. B, Sloane Swale proposed construction methodology and timeline, noting that this construction needs to occur as part of Stage 6 works. C, Sloane Swale detail, including proposed maintenance schedule where the swale drain intersects the road crossings. Shallow culverts are to be constructed beneath the road, which may allow movement of Sloanes without direct impact by vehicle or pedestrian movement, as the use of culverts by Sloane froglet is not assured. And in order to ensure unrestricted movement, low-profile curbs shall be used throughout the subdivision. D, Sloane Swale detail, including proposed habitat opportunities and linkages. The Sloane Swale must be planted and maintained to the satisfaction of Council for Sloane's froglet. This is to be as per the road reserve figure hierarchy typical cross section on SJE drawing 501703 PL6 revision B, sheet 6 of 9 dated the 14th of December 2023, and the condition reasons for that is to ensure environmental connectivity for the Sloane's froglet. G, amend condition D3 to remove the reference to the hydrological assessment report as it was not submitted with the application or considered determinative to the assessment. And D3, buffer to seasonal herbaceous wetlands. A buffer of 50 metres is to be maintained between the seasonal herbaceous wetlands and the development site, subject to council's approval. And the condition reason is to protect the seasonal herbaceous wetlands from construction work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glacken. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'd like to second that motion. I'm so glad I don't have to read it.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken, do you wish to speak to the motion at all?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, to highlight a few things. This development, as I raised at the last meeting 2 weeks ago, is a good development, I believe, and is appropriate for the area. The developer has gone to significant lengths to ensure a number of things have been enabled, including the retention of a significant number of significant trees in the development. I'd like to thank our staff for providing all of the documents, 505 pages in one of the attachments alone. And I know that there were a number of queries raised 2 weeks ago, and I believe that staff have provided good answers and good information related to this for this meeting tonight. I have also asked that a couple of additional conditions be added to the draft notice of determination. And we've heard tonight from the developer's representative that they believe that these conditions will indeed enhance this development. It is a significant development application. It's 114 lots. It is a significant component of what is really a much larger development, Brooklyn Fields, that has been coming to council on a regular basis for a number of years now in a very much planned and staged development process. The advantages of the staged process should not be overlooked by us as a council and a community. It offers advantages to us as a community, but also to the developer. To the community, it offers the opportunity of learned experience for the developer to enhance and develop further stages. It offers also to our community for the development to develop as time moves forward, so that we don't have one large development with all the conditions the same. It can be developed on a progressive way so that the learnings are used in the further development and stages as we move forward. We have heard a number of questions tonight, and we had a speaker against the culverts this evening prior to the meeting. And it will be interesting, I think, and in fact, probably a very good opportunity for us to investigate and do further research with whether or not the culverts or the low curbs will be of better use or more advantageous in this situation. And I am mindful of the fact that last week reference was made by one of the speakers here at council with reference to the low curbs, and there was a quote or a comment made about the bringing the nature closer to the road so that they could get run over. So I'm not certain that is the intention. In fact, I know it's not the intention. And I believe that offering the culverts and the rollover curb is an opportunity to enable either for the froglets to either go under or indeed to be able to access the roadway and make their way across. We do need developments in Albury. And as one of the councillors said in the previous motion, and that was the rescission motion, we need development. We need housing lots and we need housing. We are in a housing crisis and this development offers us 114 lots. It is a good, in my opinion, it's a good development. They have taken considerable, made considerable effort to bring these two next stages forward. And we have always been aware that this was a staged development. And I believe that's been an absolute advantage for us as a community, as it has been to the developer, so that they too can better bring the new developments to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clacken. Speaker 4, Councillor Thurley.
I just want to add one or two small points. The issue of culverts has been raised, and as chair of the Murray Lower Darling Environment Water Advisory Group, I've had some experience, so that we're not talking about a small round pipe. We can use larger rectangular pipes and provided they're short enough, you can actually have vegetation of some sort growing in there. And these have been used now to enable fish passage in many places. And I think with some research, it's possible that we could determine whether Sloane's Froglet would use such a passageway. But it has been used significantly in the Murray and Lower Darling for fish passages. And some of these are not, I'm not talking about big fish, I'm talking about tiny fish. And so I think there's a possibility. I'm not a frog expert, but that's just something I wanted to add.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. Speaker against, Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. It is a good development that will and should happen over time, but like all developments, they should be considered developments. I raised a few issues last time that I believe. One of those being, I mentioned tonight, the buffer being 50 metres, and I'd like to be further, but it's been made a conclusion already. I have concerns around connectivity and safety. I know some of these were addressed in the documentation. However, one, access in and out of the estate really concerns me and some of the residents in regards to emergencies or incidents that have happened, which I raised last time, but more importantly, bushfires as well. I did mention last time that there is that back dirt road, which some of the residents don't actually know about. So perhaps some better signage in that space would support that development as well. So connecting to some shared paths for improved accessibility and livability. So encourage walkers, bike riders and mobility scooters to actually access the precinct of Thurgoona would be another enhancement as well. I'd like to note one of the highlights and positives for me was the open space being 7,875 metres squared. This is what we ask for and hope for in developments as well. Improves livability for the people that are going to be there and a nice meeting place for them as well. However, in this instance, it seems that all the documentation hasn't been provided, and it seems in this case that we might be dodging documentation, and that's why I'll be voting against it tonight. Thank you.
To close debate, Councillor Clacken.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm a little hesitant to really comment about the comment we might be dodging documentation. I do not believe we are. I believe that we have the relevant documentation. and that we have been provided with all of the tools with which we can make a good decision or a decision and a determination on this development. I'm minded that about 20 years ago, when I was a new councillor, I was told by someone who had served as a councillor for a number of years that one of the greatest tools we have as a councillor is to be able to ask questions. There have been a significant number of questions asked about this development, not only tonight, but at the previous meeting. And that's in addition to the questions that were asked by our staff of the developer as they help the developer or work with the developer to bring this development application to the stage where it can be presented to council for a determination. I am of the firm belief that this development is a good development and it will enhance the area, the aspects of the development that work with the environment will enhance the development and offer a good housing stock or area stock for housing for our community. It will also offer an opportunity, as has been further discussed this evening by Councillor Thurley, an opportunity to look at the two options or the two levels of provision for the Sloane's Froglets within this area. And I think that will be something that we'll be able to utilise. The outcome of that will be something we'll be able to utilise in other areas of the Goona as well. And I think that's a really positive thing for us to be enabling now. And I encourage councillors to support this development application with the revised draft application conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glacken. In division, I'll call this motion. Those for Councillors Thurley, Bowen, King, Cameron, Glacken and Baker. Those against, Councillors Callaghan and Edwards. That motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. CM10, presentations and deputations. We have none. CM11, reports, minutes of committees and working parties. CM11.1, minutes of the Albury Airport Advisory Committee meeting held on Wednesday, the 31st of July, 2024. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor King, to move the recommendation as a motion that council receives, notes and accepts the minutes of the Albury Airport Advisory Committee meeting held Wednesday, 31 July 24. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bowen.
You'll second that motion?
Thank you. Got a question first up, or did you want to speak to the motion first? Question, Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King, to the relevant staff member. It's a long question, Councillor Cameron, so be patient. The Albury Airport, so in general business, item number 4, the roundabout at Barella Road and Riverina Highway, council will advocate to the Transport for New South Wales for entry upgrades, was the minutes taken. It seems to me that someone has to be severely injured or die before something happens on Barella Road.
Point of order,
question
Councillor
is-
Callaghan. Yeah, thank you. Could you get to your question, please?
Any funding has been committed to the Barella Road by the state government.
Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. This is the Airport Advisory Committee meeting, and I don't believe that's pertinent to the minutes of the Airport Advisory Committee meeting.
We refer to the roundabout as the entry to the airport, and I'm asking what, if any.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Barella Road section to mediate that into the air.
Thank
Thank
you,
you, Madam
Councillor
Mayor.
Councillor Glacken. I'll just seek a discussion with the CEO in relation to that question. Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. Succinct and to the point, I'll accept your question again.
What if any funding, or has any funding been committed to the Barella Road upgrade at the entry to the airport?
Thank you. Mr. Ambrose, Mr. Glass, sorry, Ambrose Glass, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor King, and through you, and thank you for the question. The minutes refer to advocating for funding, of course. I'm not aware of any funding, but I can take that question on notice and come back to you as to what funding has been committed.
Thank you. Any other questions or speakers for or against? If not, you're happy to put the motion. Those for, those against? That motion is carried. CM 11.2 minutes of the Albury Crime Prevention Committee meeting held on Tuesday, the 11th of June, 2024. I chair it. So if you're waiting for someone to move it, could someone move it for me? Thank you, Councillor Clacken.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor King, to move the recommendation as a motion that council receives, notes and accepts the minutes of the Albury Crime Prevention Committee meeting held on Tuesday, 11th of June, 2024. And I do apologise for my tardy action there. I was trying to get it up on my screen. Thank you.
No, that's fine. We've many councillors in the room. That's fine. Councillor Callaghan.
Happy to second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you. Any speakers for? Oh, question, Councillor Callaghan.
I have 3 questions, if I may. The first question through to the most relevant staff member is, a subcommittee has been established to plan for the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence to be held from the 25th of November to the 10th of December. How will Albury City be supporting this fantastic initiative?
Ms. Code.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Callaghan, and through you, Mayor King. Albury City supports and is part of the subcommittee for the Border Domestic Violence Network. So we participate in the subcommittee and we are engaged in carrying out the activities and supporting the group.
Thank you. My second question is, there's some amazing mural art in the community, and this has been known to deter and prevent graffiti. Is there any mural artwork planned for the near future? And if so, where would this be happening?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Callaghan, and through you, Mayor King. Yes, we do have some mural art planned. We have a major piece of mural art planned at the Telstra interchange on Five Ways in Lavington. It is going to be a very large mural, which will have a significant impact in terms of visual presence and also community and the building a connection to the community.
Ms. Code. And my final question, can we have an update on the free urban art wall location?
Ms. Code.
Thank you for the question, and through you, Mayor King. We are currently investigating a number of options with regard to finding the best wall or the location for that. There's a number of factors to consider, so it's quite challenging. It has to be away from residential areas, but close enough to get to. It has to ideally have an established wall, and to reduce construction costs, it has to be accessible and also be something that the community and the artists and the young artists would like to use. So we're still working through a number of options. We have not yet finalised a location.
Thank you, Ms. Code.
Thank you. Question, Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Follow-up question to Councillor Callaghan's question with regards to the wall. Is it possible to have more than one wall, or is it possible for staff to consider more than one wall so that the people who use it, the youth, I'm suggesting could be from different suburbs?
Ms. Code.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Glacken, and through you, Mayor King. Whilst it's certainly possible to consider more than one wall, we currently have one wall in our graffiti action plan to be a trial to see how it works. Once we have that trial implemented, we can then analyse what the results are and then certainly continue to roll it out if the community and the results back that up.
Thank you, councillors. Happy to put the motion. Those for? Those against? That motion is carried. CM 11.3 minutes of the Albury Aquatic Facilities Advisory Committee meeting held on Wednesday, the 31st of July, 2024. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Through you, to move the recommendation as a motion that council receives, notes and accepts the minutes of the Albury Aquatics Facility Advisory Committee meeting held on Wednesday, 31 July 2024. Thank you.
You, Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you, Councillor Glacken. We do have a question. Did you wish to speak to it first? Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. Question.
Yes, thank you, Mayor King. Through to the most relevant staff member. Just hoping we can have an update on the stakeholder engagement process for the redevelopment of the Lavington pool.
Mr. Glass.
Thank you, Mayor King, and through you, and thank you for the question, Councillor Gallagher. So the contractor we had their initial meeting last week. and we're still working through the understanding of the contract. We expect to commence we expect to agree the engagement plan in the coming week, and then from there we'll be engaging with all our community stakeholders, including swimming clubs, over the coming month.
Thanks.
Thank you. Happy to put the motion. Councillor Glacken to wrap.
Thank you. The stakeholder engagement plan was discussed, as in the concept of a stakeholder engagement plan was discussed at the meeting, and the participants at the meeting gave feedback to the staff on a couple of aspects that they believe were very important to that. So to clarify that, thank you.
Thank you, councillors. We'll put the motion. Those for, those against. That motion is carried. CM12 documents for sealing. We have none. CM13 officers' reports for consideration. CM 13.1 development application 010.2024.0004081.001 industrial development 34 McLaurin Road, Etamoga. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move that Council A receives the contents of this report and B grants consent to development application 10.2024.40810.1 for general industry on land situated at 34 McLaurin Road, Etamoga, Lot 6 of DP 1276039, subject to the conditions contained in the draft determination included at attachment 4 to this report.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken.
Happy to second that.
Thank you. Question, Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. To the most relevant staff member. Sorry, pardon me, no question.
There is another question, Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. My question is with reference to the fact that it was this the report was really drafted by an external group because of the relationship with Albury City Council. Is that due to the fact that the land was originally owned by Albury City Council? Is the land still owned by Albury City Council? Is it proposed that the land will be leased to the developer, or will it be sold and it's just a matter of timing?
Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, through the chair, thank you for the question. At the time of making the application, the land was still in the ownership of Albury City Council, is my understanding, which in accordance with our council-related development policy obliges us to have independent assessment of the application, and that's why you see that before you. Ultimately, I understand it is intended to be sold.
Thank you very much. I just needed that clarification. Yeah, thank you. Because my understanding was it would be sold, but yeah, thank you.
Understood. Speaking for the motion, Councillor Thurley.
Very briefly, this is Council's long-term vision to have this industrial hub set out there at Etamoga is now starting to pay off, and we have another exciting development coming into the estate. So it's fantastic news.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. Is there a question or a button pushed? Yep.
Very quick question. The emphasis for Nexus has been in the last few years has been on recycling and the circular economy. I'm wondering if the use of this shed, noting it's for tilt slab concrete, are there opportunities for this developer? Is that why they are moving there and using this site to be able to use some recycled components within their structures? Is that why they're going there?
Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, through the chair, and thank you for the question. My understanding, and this is somewhat speculative, is that the existing site that they are in North Albury is simply not large enough to accommodate them. I think the intent of the precinct is a jobs precinct. This, I think, mentions approximately 20 employees. And they may constitute new employees. I'm not certain on their existing operation, but obviously with the ability to expand, it offers that possibility. There are a range of developments approved in the Nexus area, including a fairly substantial drinks manufacturer as well. So I think, and I hesitate to speculate again, but that we will see the expansion of the jobs precinct with a variety of different types of development occurring.
Thank you. Happy to put the motion, councillors. This is also in division. Those for councillors Thurley, Callaghan, Edwards, Bowen, King, Cameron, Glacken and Baker. There are none against. That motion is carried. CM 13.2 Development Application 010.2021.00399059.001 Link Road between Woolshed Estate Stages 1 to 5 and Stages 6 to 10 Woolshed Estate Link Road 87 Kerr Road, Thurgoona. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move that Council A receives the contents of this report and B grants consent to development application 10.2021.390591 regarding land described as 87 Kerr Road, Thurgoona, open parentheses, Lot 1, DP 1004069, close parentheses, and Lot 443 Kerr Road, Thurgoona, open parentheses, Lot 443 DP 1276799, close parentheses, proposing the construction of a link road between Woolshed Estate, stages 1 to 5 and stages 6 to 7, subject to the conditions contained in the draft determination, including including at attachment 5 to this report.
Thank you. And just clarifying that the second part of that was stages 6 to 10. You just mentioned 7, but that's okay. Just for clarification, it is.
I did go to the Christian Brothers, Mayor.
Far be it for me to question. So 6 to 10 is confirmed. Councillor Glacken.
Happy to second that recommendation as a motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron, did you wish to speak to it?
Thank you. Very briefly, Mayor King. I think I'm stating the obvious, I believe I am, when I say that transport infrastructure in Thurgoona is probably the biggest challenge facing this and future councils. As mentioned earlier in tonight's debates, virtually the only area for growth of housing in our city, which is sorely needed, is Thurgoona Willinga. Consequently, that development brings with it a requirement to provide all possible infrastructure as soon as possible. And frankly, I think it's fairly well known to certainly the people who live in that area that our transport infrastructure is starting to reach capacity if it hasn't already been exceeded. All transport infrastructure should be given a priority, in my opinion, including this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Question, Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King, to the most relevant staff member. I'm confused as to why we're approving a link road to a development that hasn't been approved at this stage. Seems presumptuous.
Mr. Wilson.
Through the chair, was the question that why are we recommending this?
Why are we approving it to, I suppose, yeah, why are we recommending? I suppose, why isn't it part of the next development stage 6 to 10? Why aren't they all linked together for approval?
Yep. Through you, Mayor King, and thank you for the question and the clarification. So the application itself was made as a separate application. And so just generally in terms of processing development applications, there's some obligation to consider the merits of that application as it stands on its own. In this case, that very detailed environmental assessment has been undertaken. As was clarified in the motion, there's a significant strategic benefit to this particular link in terms of future access, both for Chisholm Park and for Woolshed. In addition, an approval at this time would allow the development to occur and its construction to occur outside of the Sloan's breeding season.
Thank you. Question, Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor King, and through to the relevant staff member. Noting the response to that question, but just to follow up, the staff report says that one of the reasons that the two were separated, so the DA for the road and the DA for the subdivision, was that further information was required to assess the subdivision. So my question is, what is the further information that is required for the subdivision?
Mr Wilson?
Through you, Mayor King, and thank you for the question. So the status of the related subdivision application for stages 6 to 10 is that there has been a response to that information request. At this stage, administration is still in the process of considering that information, reviewing it. The reason the application isn't before council is we simply haven't finished that assessment at this point.
Thank you. Follow-up question?
Some new questions. Through you to the relevant staff member, is it possible to confine the road construction to the area assessed in the BDAR, given machinery movements, turning circles and access that might be required?
Mr Wilson?
So through the chair, the BDAR considers the impact of both the construction. So there are two different areas, I believe, identified in the BDAR. One is construction impacts and the other is the impact of the actual ultimate road itself.
Councillor Edwards?
Follow-up question. I noted in the report that council staff requested that the BDAR consider the cumulative impacts of both the road and the subdivision. Was that done?
Mr Wilson?
Yeah, thank you for the question and through you, Mayor King. Yes, that was undertaken. So the BDAR was revised in order to account for both the direct impacts of the proposed construction of the linking road, as well as the indirect impacts of the proposed subdivision.
Councillor Edwards?
Thank you, Mayor King. So the BDAR confirms that the shallow fringes of the Woolshed Dam are known Sloane's froglet habitat and that the proposed works to regulate the water level of the dam, which will be addressed in the DA for the stages 6 to 10, and that will be an important tool in maintaining the potential habitat for Sloane's froglet. So can you confirm then that the impacts of this DA are not being mitigated by the conditions in this DA, and rather they are notionally being mitigated in the DA for the related subdivision that's yet to be approved?
Mr Wilson?
Through you, Mayor King, I think I understand the question. So the development application for the road includes consideration around the plant community type grassy box gum woodland, which incorporates the potential habitat of a variety of listed species, including Sloane's froglet in this case as well. It's demanded entry into the biodiversity offset scheme. And so there is a requirement and the conditions are included which recognise the impact to the Sloane's area. In terms of the works required and proposed to the dam to mitigate impacts, they are indeed attached to the stage 6 to 10 subdivision proposal.
Thank you.
Thank you. Question, Councillor Bowen?
Thank you, Mayor King, and through to the most relevant member of staff. Can you confirm that the way I understand where this road goes across is the least impact to environmental there possibly can be? Is that the way I understand why the road is gone in an S-type configuration?
Mr Wilson?
Through you, Mayor King, and thank you for the question. The location of the road was chosen based upon a consideration around environmental impact, and it was considered, and I believe this is detailed in the documentation, including the BDAR, that this was considered an appropriate location and the less impactful of potential points of crossing of that area.
Thank you. Speaker against, Councillor Edwards?
Thank you, Mayor King. This DA is yet another example of development at the cost of our environment and our local threatened species. The staff report states that this DA needs to be dealt with now to time the works in a way that minimises impacts to the Sloane's froglet breeding season. This is noble. However, the proponent has had nearly 3 years to work out the timing of this development, and this should not be a consideration for whether this DA is approved or not. This road and the related subdivision should be considered together because one cannot happen without the other. I suspect that this DA is being rushed through the very last meeting of this council to give councillors a false sense of urgency. I also suspect that the road has been separated from the main subdivision to distract councillors from the cumulative impacts to the environment that the road and the subdivision have together. I don't think that the BDAR has assessed the cumulative impacts of both developments. It also appears that the removal of the box gum woodland for the road is the only consideration of the BDAR. The adjacent wetland and known Sloan's froglet habitat have not been properly considered. The Statement of Environmental Effects says that the proposed installation of the dam outlet regulator should minimise any potential changes in the typical runoff volume and water quality into Wilshire Dam as a consequence of the development, and minimise any indirect impacts of potential flow restrictions of built infrastructure on Wilshire Dam. Further, the Statement of Environmental Effects states that the regulator is the reason that there will not be significant impacts on Sloan's. However, as staff have just confirmed, the regulator will not be installed as part of this DA for the works that will have those impacts. The related subdivision, which does include the regulator, we're told, requires further information. Although we've been told that that's now been received, but it's unclear to me how long that will take to be assessed. This could take some time. We are then left with impacts to Sloan's habitat that might not be mitigated until the approval of the subdivision. When will this be? Why would the proponent go to the effort of installing regulators in the future if all the frogs are already dead from the impacts associated with the construction of the road? The impacts of this development should be mitigated by the works as part of this DA. Lastly, this DA is a perfect example of why biocertification does not work. The C3 lands are supposed to be offsets for development elsewhere, but here they are being subject to development themselves. This double dipping represents a net loss for biodiversity. The money paid by the proponent for the loss of the habitat in the C3 land goes into a trust. Great. However, Table B in Condition 6 of the draft determination says that the credits paid for the loss of threatened species for this development could be used anywhere in New South Wales, and potentially has no direct benefit for the biodiversity of Albury. This would constitute a permanent loss, or could constitute a permanent loss of biodiversity in Albury. I've asked for councillors to be briefed on the cumulative impacts and overall outcomes of biodiversity certification in the Albury LGA on a number of occasions, and those requests to date have been ignored. Certification for the whole LGA has not been extended beyond 2026. Council is now seeking future certification of the Thurgoona growth areas. In fact, there's $500,000 in the budget for this. Further certification will only lead to more large old trees being cut down, more hollow-bearing trees being cut down, threatened species and their habitat being lost, and the creation of more baking hot, black-roofed urban wastelands being built instead of the homes amongst shade and nature that I think most people imagine when they think of Thurgoona. So I don't support impacts to threatened species without timely mitigation, and I don't support approval of this DA.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Any other speakers or questions? Councillor Glacken, speaker 4.
Thank you. And through you, Madam Mayor, I remember earlier tonight in another development application discussion that a question was raised or a comment was raised when speaking either for or against the motion about there being only one access road to the previous development. This link road will in future offer greater access to that development. The development stages 6 and 7 that were dealt with earlier this evening needed to be progressed before the developer would be able to consider doing the link road. And we are made aware that further developments on the other side of the link road are being reviewed by council staff at the moment, and the further information has been received for them. We've also been made aware in the report, and the staff have answered the question also tonight, but in the report, it was made clear that the link road, if we are to enable the link road to be built at the most opportune time for the Sloan froglets, it is to be over the period where they're not breeding. And there is a window of opportunity that we need to enable this developer to be able to utilise. This developer would not be putting this link road through if they were not committed to this development. And we know, as I have alluded to earlier this evening, or highlighted earlier this evening, this developer has progressed this development in a number of stages, and they would not be putting this link road through unless they were committed to the further stages of this development and committed to ensuring that those further stages would be permissible and meet the standards for the necessary standards to preserve the environment as much as possible and wherever possible for those future stages to be good developments. I believe that it's important that the link road be put through, and I believe that we can support that now based on the information that we have and based on the critical fact of the Sloane's froglet. So I believe I will be supporting this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glacken. No further speakers. Councillor Cameron to close.
Thank you, Mayor King. I think some of my fellow councillors think they've hit on a pretty successful tactic, which, going by the last council meeting, it is a successful tactic. And that is to forensically question some of the staff members, even to the point of badgering them, until they're able to create a shadow of doubt in people's minds, particularly their fellow councillors, enough to perhaps convince people not to vote for sensible motions that are before them. As has been well discussed tonight and on other occasions, there is only one development for housing really in Albury, and that is the Thurgoona-Willinga area. The physical, sewerage and water constraints of the other accesses outside the city prohibit much development at all, and the geopolitical reality of where our border is with Hume. That means we have to have transport infrastructure, and we need this housing. I've already touched on the dire need for increasing our housing stocks that is affecting hundreds of families, thousands of families in Albury, both through the meteoric rise in property prices, which put housing out of the reach of many working families, and the inability of many people, particularly working families and working class people and people who are unemployed or on other benefits, the elderly, to find housing. We have got people in this city sleeping out rough in the middle of winter. We've got people sleeping in houses. And what are we to be concerned about but bloody Sloane's froglets? Personally, as long as we are doing everything legally, I have no care for the Sloane's froglet. I care about those working families. I care about those people seeking rental accommodation. I care about those people who can't afford to buy their own home. And if they are to be treated in this fashion and condemned to that situation to pander to a Sloane's froglet, I think we've come to a very poor stage of affairs. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm sorry, Mayor King.
No, fine. Thank you, Councillor Cameron. I'll put the motion. This is also in division, councillors. Those for, councillors Thurley, Bowen, King, Cameron, Glacken, Baker. Those against, councillors Callaghan and Edwards. That motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. CM 13.3, pesticide use notification plan and public exhibition submissions. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you through you to move the recommendation as a motion that Council A receive and note the submissions received during the public exhibition period. B, endorse the final version of the WHS pesticide use notification plan procedure documents, including 1 WHS 9.5.4 pesticide use notification plan and WHS 5.9.4.1 pesticide spray record template. C, submit the final version of the WHS pesticide use notification plan procedure documents to the Environmental Protection Authority in writing as per S43 of the Pesticides Regulation 2017. Thank you.
You, Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken, did you wish to speak to it at all? Questions? Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Mayor King. Through you to the most appropriate member of staff. Any of the pesticides used that are identified, or any of the pesticides used by Albury City Council that are identified in our plan harmful to Sloane's froglets?
Mr Costello.
Thanks very much for the question, Councillor Cameron, through you, Mayor King. All pesticides that we use are used strictly in accordance with the label, and that those labels are done so in accordance with the environmental outcomes that are required. So I can't speak on specifics of the Sloan's froglet, but what I can say is that we do apply chemicals in accordance with the label's requirements.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor King, and through you to the relevant member of staff. Can staff please provide an update on the preparation of the pesticides use policy as requested by council?
Mr Costello? Was it the weeds policy, just to clarify?
Apologies.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks very much for the question, Councillor Edwards, and through you, Mayor King. I think as per the resolution, we committed to try and get an update on that policy to council later in 2024. So we're currently working on that and towards those timeframes of having something to council in the back end of this year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers for or against? If not, we'll put the motion. Those for, those against? That motion is carried. Thank you. CM 13.4, Plan of Management for Community Land Review Stakeholder Engagement Plan. Do we have a mover for that? Councillor Thurley, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move that Council A receives and notes the contents of this report, and B endorses the stakeholder engagement plan for the review of the Albury City Plan of Management for Community Land and commences community consultation.
Thank you. Councillor Gluckin.
Happy to second.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, did you wish to speak to it at all? Any councillors for, or against, or questions? If not, we'll put the motion. Those for, those against? That motion is carried. CM 14, Officers' Reports for Noting. CM 14.1, Investment Balances, July 2024. Councillor Gluckin.
Thank you. Through you to move the recommendation as a motion that council receives, notes the investment balances report for the month of July 2024. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you. Did you wish to speak to it at all, Councillor Gluckin? Any councillors? In that case, we'll put the motion. Those for, those against? That motion is carried. CM 15, Delegates' Reports for Noting. We have none. CM 16, Notice of Urgent Business. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'd like to ask a question through you to the most appropriate member of staff. Are staff aware of widespread allegations of corrupt behaviour against Beam, the company that provides the scooters, electric scooters?
Miss Leopold, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron, and through you, Mayor King. Yes, we are aware of the allegations, the very serious allegations as reported over the media throughout the weekend.
Question, if I may. Although I appreciate it's only been 24 hours since this matter was illuminated, but are staff intending to develop a plan of action to mitigate any risks or any risk of unethical behaviour to the trial that is taking place in Albury?
Ms. Leopold?
Thank you, Councillor Cameron, through you, Mayor King. So the arrangement with Beam Mobility is a tripartite agreement with Transport for New South Wales, Albury City Council and Beam. Currently, the governance arrangements for that are through a working group where New South Wales Police and Department of Health are also members on that group. That group meets monthly and reviews data and certain reporting requirements as required by Beam. That working group also helps to address issues or raise local matters that may be of concern or can feed into the trial. That information is then shared at an aggregate level with New South Wales Government. At this stage, we're in discussions with Transport for New South Wales around how they might go in addressing this matter.
Mayor King, I guess it's a matter for the next council now.
Mr. CEO, Mr. Zachnich.
Yeah, one other important fact, there is no financial arrangement with Beam under the trial agreement. All costs in relation to the provision of the service are met by Beam directly and or the New South Wales Government, just to confirm that.
Mayor King, if I may be, the General Manager's interjection has raised an additional point I'd like to ask a question about. are we compensated? When I say are the people of Albury through their council compensated for time spent by council employees working on this and managing aspects of this trial?
Through you, Mayor King. So the council's in-kind contribution is our staff time in terms of participating in the working groups that Ms Leopolda referred to and responding to inquiries and questions on the trial. So that's a normal part of our contribution to these type of trials.
So through you, Mayor King.
We don't get reimbursed or compensated for that, no. It's part of our in-kind contribution.
So there's a cost to council in terms of the time of our paid employees who are paid with the ratepayers' money.
It's part of some contribution, correct.
Thank you. Question, councillor Gluckin.
Thank you. I request your indulgence to ask a follow-up question about Beam, having had it raised at the meeting tonight. And I would not have otherwise, but it's with reference to the parking signs, the decals that were promised about a month ago that have been raised a number of times, and I haven't yet seen any around town. Are there any? And what's happening? Thank you.
Ms Leopold.
Thank you, Councillor Gluckin, through you, Mayor King. At this stage, we are still waiting the provision of those decals from Beam.
Follow, Mr CEO, did you want to add to that? No? Thank you. Oh, one more matter, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor King. Just in response to Councillor Callaghan's earlier question that Mr Glass has taken on notice. So there is provision in our forward 4-year delivery program for a roundabout treatment at the intersection of Riverina Highway, which you referred to as Barella Road, and the Airport Drive intersection. Council has allocated at this time in the forward program $1.4 million in 26-27 to that project, in addition to contributions from other stakeholders, including Transport for New South Wales and adjoining landholders and or developers at that time. So just providing you with that information, because I know it'll be a while before we get to respond in a formal sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Another item of urgent business, councillor Callaghan.
Just a question in relation to that, the other landholders. So that's pending a development from another landholder as a contribution towards the roundabout?
Mr Zachnich.
It could be in terms of adjoining landholders and or developers, depending on it is in the forward plan. So there are a number of potential developments in that area that are being looked at by landholders and Transport for New South Wales.
Thank you. Any other items of urgent general business? Confidential matters. Councillor Gluckin.
Thank you. Through you to move the recommendation as a motion that council move into confidential to discuss item CM 17.1, as this is a confidential item exclusive of press or public on the grounds that the matter relates to personnel matters concerning particular individuals other than councillors. And it's with reference to Local Government Act 1993, number 30, section 10A 2A. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there, a second to first, sorry, jumped the gun. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you. Absolutely. Are there any statements or submissions from the public regarding the reasons as identified for this confidential item CM 17.1? There are none received. I'll put that motion. Those for, those against, that motion is carried. We'll take a short break. For the motion to move into confidential has now been carried. For our live stream viewers, we will now say goodbye. You can find the outcome of this confidential session in the meeting minutes, which are published on the Albury City website within 2 business days. And we'll have a break for a few minutes. Councillors?